Gooseworx and Glitch Productions have done it again. Thanks to some small details, we can say that the plot of episode 7 and beyond has practically been revealed. We're talking about why Caine could become a being very similar to the AI from the book that inspired the series, more info on episode 7, and why Kinger and Pomni could be the saviors of the entire digital circus and the key to saving everyone. Following the release of this promo, the way it was presented has caught a lot of attention, specifically the video's thumbnail. It shows Pomni and Jax, of course, locked in a cell while Caine tries to auction them off. The theme is a simple auction to recover financially from the favorite character awards. However, as we all know, this is nothing more than a subtle and cool reference to the cells where the prisoners were held in the book I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, specifically from the 1995 video game version. For those who don't know, this book is a direct inspiration for the digital circus, where several people are trapped and punished by an artificial intelligence named AM who tortures them for all eternity. It's no surprise to anyone that Gooseworx is a huge fan of the story and that the entire digital circus is inspired by this book. She even once said that despite having created this series, she'd like to one day direct a more faithful adaptation of the source material, describing the Amazing Digital Circus as a fun, toned-down version of the cruelty and madness of the original book. So it's not surprising to find several hidden references to it in various episodes, including some absurd ones like this one. And that's not all. The thing is, within the promo itself, we see Caine repeatedly lose his patience and control, starting to talk fast without stopping and even having a breakdown at the end. This isn't surprising because although he's based on Am, they are completely different, one being colder and the other a living engine of madness. The clues we've been given about Caine losing control or even referencing covers or concepts from the book itself only suggest that bit by bit, the digital circus will begin to transform into a sort of softer yet still eerie version of the book it's based on. We also see that Pomni and Jax's relationship is a bit distant. The only ones who interact throughout the promo are their evil versions, and evil Pomni with Jax, but Pomni doesn't say a word to either of them. Still, there are clear signs that despite their distance, they are still seen together quite a bit, indicating that despite what we saw in the last episode, this won't be their final interaction. There's still much more to uncover about these two. And of course, there's the part where Kinger starts talking backwards, something we've never seen him do before. The only one capable of that was Bubble in episode 3, and we know he's just an AI. As for what he says, it's not that interesting. The important thing is seeing another one of the supposed bugs he's aware of. So remembering that someone in the book sacrifices themselves at the end might give us a clue that someone here will have to do the same. But we'll talk about that shortly. Let's continue with the news. Now, moving on to some extra information that has been revealed. During a stream on the channel of Jobby the Hung, the streamer who voices the disappearing man in the series, it was mentioned that episode 7 shouldn't take too long to come out, considering they've hired more staff and are now more focused on finishing the TADC episodes first before moving on to future projects. This means that unlike the first few episodes, which took a long time to be released, the upcoming ones could arrive in even less time. An estimated release date is around early October for this episode, considering the last 33-minute episode took less than 2 months, which is not a short amount of time. But more on that will be discussed at the next event on September 25th, and as soon as that information is out, we'll be here to cover it all. Beyond that, we know a few extra things. Gooseworx expects this episode to anger certain wholesome parts of the fandom with what it's about to show, likely a breaking point for the characters of Jax and Pomni, or something even worse. We also know this episode will have a cliffhanger that will continue into episode 8. This comes from a Q&A where Goose described episode 7 as a huh and episode 8 as an oh, implying a significant connection between them. Lastly, it's known that Michael Kovac, the voice of Jax, has not yet recorded his best material for the character, so what's coming next will be peculiar and terrifying. It's not far-fetched to think about the best way to lead into a cliffhanger. It's all pointing to Caine being set up as a potential antagonist after the last episode. Not because he wants to be, but because his basic programming makes it difficult for him to understand and feel human emotions. That's why he starts to glitch when he feels disappointment or envy. He doesn't know how to react. We've also seen him get violently angry throughout the series, and even experience disappointment, fear, and worry. It's the strong emotions that will torment him and cause him to break down even more. And of course, we know how it will happen. No one likes his adventures, and with each passing episode, it seems like they're never going to happen again. The characters prefer the suggestion box, or just altering and desecrating Caine's ideas, forming a small snowball that will gradually grow until it bursts. This could turn Caine into a dangerous and incorrigible AI that will only corrupt the space its inhabitants live in, and therefore their very reality, creating the perfect open ending that will leave everyone confused about what just happened, or what's to come. Because when episode 8 begins, we'll go from a huh to an oh. As a small detail, Kinger starts speaking backward in the promo, an ability previously only seen in Bubble, a simple AI. While the fact that he can communicate in reverse is interesting, what he says is more of a curiosity than anything else. Kinger actually says, "I buried Paul," or "cranberry sauce," in reference to the Beatles conspiracy theory. In the book story, it's the protagonist, Ted, who saves everyone, so to speak, from a fate worse than spending over a century trapped in a metal prison covered in guts and wires, where they only suffer for all eternity. In the case of the Digital Circus, it could very well be Kinger who stays behind and sacrifices himself for everyone. Yes, even for Jax. Why? He carries the guilt and responsibility for several events he believes he's to blame for. Of course, he told us this early on before Ragita arrived at the circus and changed his perspective, bringing a little happiness to someone who had already lost the love of his life and practically everything else. We know that thanks to his wife, he developed a liking for insects, but we're not just talking about those kinds of insects. That's just a facade to hide the fact that he knows about bugs to hack the system and get what he needs when necessary. There have been many theories that Kinger plays the fool to go unnoticed, that he was one of the creators of the CNA company, or even that he could be one of the two names in the company title, Caine and Abel. But what is known is that if everything were to collapse, he could be the key to stopping an out-of-control Caine. Not only because he considers everyone there his family, but also because it would allow him to settle the internal debts he feels responsible for, giving a second chance to these beings who don't deserve to be in such a terrifying place. But what if Kinger can't be the one to sacrifice himself, either because King kills him or because he's not in the right place at the right time? Who else could perform such a feat? Well, while Gooseworx has already said that Digital Circus is an inspiration, what's to stop the protagonist herself from being the savior? Unlike other characters whose pasts, problems, or motivations were revealed in episodes focused on them, though we've seen Jax's issues are to hide the pain he feels after losing his friend, which doesn't justify treating his friends poorly. Pomni, as the protagonist, has also grown throughout these episodes. She has gone from being a paranoid, fearful, and insecure jester to being an emotional pillar for some of the characters. Of course, not all the time. She's had her own moments of crisis, and who could blame someone who just wants to escape a completely unknown place where you can't even remember your own name? Like Ted from the book, she has felt the fear of thinking that everyone hates her, or that no one would care if she were too abstract. No one would remember her, or no one would miss her. But that's not the case. The time she has spent in this place has shown her the opposite, with characters who have formed a close bond with her, taught her lessons, and shown her that everyone is worth something, even those who hide something inside that terrifies them, be it a past trauma or fear of their current situation. There are still no clear clues as to who the other three characters might be to headline the final episodes. It's possible that Caine will end up corrupted by his constant glitches, that the company will intervene to prevent an escape, or even that Bubble will be revealed as the final boss who destroys everyone in the circus. Or maybe all three will happen. No one knows for sure. These final episodes could revolve around Pomni as the central axis driving the plot, since she's the only one left who hasn't had an episode centered on her. Although the characters may not remember their names, they might begin to recover fragments of their past, who they were, what motivated them, or why they continue to fight. Pomni, for example, already shared part of her story in the bar episode. She talked about her life as a bored accountant who, as a hobby, recorded videos in abandoned places. That very hobby was what unintentionally dragged her into a place she never imagined being a part of. However, she now seems to hold a purpose far greater than she ever thought she'd have in her 2.5 decades of life. The chance to do something truly important important for others. Maybe she doesn't seem the most qualified at first. A jester with a monotonous past who seems more like a joke than a serious character? Even Kinger would seem to have more reason to be the chosen one. His backstory is more tragic, he lost his wife, he seems connected to the company, and there are theories stemming from a scene in the mid-season teaser that suggest he might be the one who stays behind in the end. So why should it be Pomni? It's not just because she's the protagonist. Although she is fearful, unadventurous, even cowardly, and her evil version might reflect who she truly is deep down, she has shown something that goes beyond all that: empathy. She has reached out even to those who seem to have lost their humanity. She has learned to listen, to know when to let go, to apologize, and to connect with those who, like her, are trapped. Heck, even with Jax, she refused to let him go, despite how closed off he became and how much he claimed to hate everyone. Deep down, she saw that he was just putting up a defense mechanism to keep her from getting close. And although it seems they still aren't talking, that last glance tells us she'd try again. She wouldn't give up on extending a hand to someone who is suffering. Even if he's not a good person, she wants to help him because she knows Jax was forcing himself to push everyone away and that, deep down, he's scared. Her jester avatar doesn't represent who she is inside. Perhaps it reflects how she feels after falling into the hands of a corporation that stripped her of her most precious identity. They might even be humiliating her for fun, as suggested in the latest short uploaded to the YouTube channel. A short that, in Caine's words, is canon now. So the fact that they mock Pomni by calling her Christine suggests that this is her real name. Of course, she just doesn't know it. Wouldn't it be funny to laugh at that? At someone who was just looking for a personal hobby and was kidnapped and transported without her consent into a false reality that's actually a torture chamber? Someone who went through various phases to become the character we have now, and who, in future appearances, will be capable of giving her own life to save them all? Perhaps Kinger is the most qualified given the future circumstances, but Pomni has something he doesn't: an emotional growth with most of her companions that will help her be the one to find the courage, to be the key, the way out for them. She would even be willing to save a simple NPC just because he showed more humanity by breaking from his programming to learn the truth of his own existence. Do you think Pomni or Kinger will be able to save them all? I think so.